Liberation Front. I'm here with Lee Howerton and my boy Seven. We're basically rebooting the Digital Liberation Front on the Progressive Insider.
No, I'm like, because I'm looking at the screen right now. So I'm wondering
if everybody, thank you so much for joining us on our obviously very informal happy hour. We're just hanging out, having a good time, having a birthday party. Join the whole crew here. So now we have people from what was Progressive Insider and what was DLF now together. So here's some of our team. We just wanted to hang out, get to know each other a little bit better, and get some conversation going, let you know us. So Brandon, you are with DLF. What is DLF all about, and what are we going to be doing with all of this?
Okay, so I'm going to address the camera.
Okay.
So the Digital Liberation Front started around the time of, I'm going to give just a little brief history, started around the time of the 2016 election. I went into a chat room on Facebook, and it was supposed to be a political discussion chat room, and it actually turned out to be a covert, group where a bunch of racists were congregating. And from what I understand about the group, it didn't originally start like that, but apparently a lot of white supremacists and whatnot had infiltrated that group. So basically, I quickly found out that, interacting with them was not very, very fruitful. And then eventually what happened was they kicked me out. And then they let me back in, they kicked me out again. And so I started the chat group, and there were other people who were getting kicked out on a regular basis. And we congregated in that chat group so we could continue the discussion and keep the discussion moving. So to make a long story short, we aided one another in debates, discussions, and then, the group grew and we added more people into the discussion, into the dialogue. And I started doing live shows, and featuring people from the group because I really wanted to focus on, the narrative, because I saw all of the bigots, all of the racists, all the fascists, they're congregating and interacting and, plotting to do negative things. We should get together and plot to do positive things. And so that's how we got here.
That's exactly. So I just want to say welcome to Mike Patino. He's one of our Patreon supporters. Thank you, Mike. We couldn't do what we're doing without your support. And then Joel from the National Progressive Party. We just did their Wednesday interview where Joel was a big part of that. So check that out on their page or on ours. So welcome, Joel. Thank you for joining us for our Happy Hour Friday. So, Rebecca, you've turned off your camera. Why?
I'm back.
Oh, are you? Okay, there you are. So, Rebecca, tell people a little bit about you.
I'm a person?
Whatever you want people to know. Make up a story. It doesn't matter. They'll never know.
Okay. I guess I could kind of start with why I care a lot about this movement in general. Would be, I'm a single mom. I have 5 children. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to work as hard as you can work and still not be able to make ends meet. And obviously life is unfair, but it shouldn't be that unfair. There's a lot of single mothers. There's a lot of, there's just a lot of things going on that make you vulnerable in the world that you need your government to have your back sometimes. It's not like you need the government to take over, but you need it to have your back. You need it to not use you as a slave worker, and you work your butt off and you can't make ends meet, and it's not right. And the other reason is there's a lot of racism going on. There's a lot of shit going on in the world that is not right, and with Trump's arrival, he's made it a billion times worse. And a lot of people are more emboldened to say what they really feel, which I guess is a good thing in a way, because then you can confront them about it. But I have mixed children. I have children who are Black and white. And you can see the extremes happening on both sides, where the white supremacists, and you would see on the other side where, you know, they think they're better because of their skin color. Like, skin color shouldn't play that big of a role. So I think we all just need to be able to come together and be able to get along. And that's my only goal, is to shut down people that want otherwise.
Right.
So that's my story.
That's excellent. No, and I think a lot of us all have that. It's just pushing back on that misinformation, like just this whole nonsense with the mass. I think really brought that to the forefront.
Right.
It's a ridiculous thing, but then behind that is all these other issues that are very serious. Like you said, you're a mom of mixed race kids. So am I. So we see that from a different perspective, and I think that is really important. That just to let people know that's not okay, and it's all about that Overton window. And Lee, I think you were talking about the Overton window. I think you and Brandon at one point were both talking about shifting that into what is acceptable, changing all of that. So, Lee, you available?
Lee, I want to interject one thing. Lee is like the official like co-founder of the DLF before you and I met in those initial chat rooms. That's what I ran into Lee.
Yeah, I was a member of that particular chat group, which started out as it was one of the big political forums for the Greensboro area, and then a lot of people started leaving, and basically, the liberals said we're tired of some of the people in here, so we're going to go start our own group. And their group really took off because they didn't let people be openly racist and bully people, and turns out people liked that type of environment. So really one guy is in charge of that one group, and for better or worse, he pretends to be other people badly. And also admitted to me that he's an informant for local, state, and federal law enforcement. So it's kind of like, jokes on everyone. He's feeding information to the feds about everyone who's in the group and what they're doing and who their affiliations are. So
yeah, we're doing though.
Almost like a true chaotic neutral. No one's safe. Even the people he pretends to be on the same side with, just pushing back against disinformation. We came up with this coalition of, get people who are local, who, everyone knows at least one other person and has met them in real life. So that way we can definitely tell, okay, well, there's no fake accounts or bots infiltrating us and trying to, take control of anything or push narratives, and using our own experience where others might lack that experience. Everyone has some sort of overlap that we can share strengths to cover weakness.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think what I was so impressed with when I met your group was you started out small and local, like you said, but I've talked to Rose, who's out in Seattle. It's Friday, and people from all across the country who have gravitated to that same kind of message and the same methods. So to me, that was really encouraging to see so many people who have that same mindset and dedicated to the same thing. So I think is really encouraging, especially when you look at the headlines and things are kind of going to hell. Like, what happened to all the same people? Well, they're here. We're just not as loud as somebody who is, got to make their case for Trump badly. So
it's also hard to be vocal right now. It's hard to be vocal because you have to know your shit, and you have to be willing to really put yourself out there, to put your opinion out, because they will act like you're a demon for saying it in the first place.
mm-hmm.
the one thing I found out was, in the groups, and not just in the groups versus real life is like, we've become so hesitant to talk about politics, hesitant to talk about like what's right and what's good because we're so scared to offend. Like we have this false idea that everybody's, opinion, is valid no matter what. So if somebody, says, I like to eat, rock sandwiches, somehow, that's supposed to be just as valid as somebody who says, a good diet, is great for your system. And that sounds like all fine and dandy until you're dealing with people who are like virulent racists and bigots. And they created a toxic environment that does like Lee says, it causes individuals to leave the group, just like they did in that initial group that, DLF arose out of. And so it's important for us to connect. It's important for us to talk still, and even much more important because of the fact that the people who are so wrong, so hateful, they have no problem being loud. And one thing that I found in the groups, because the original group that we started in was just the jump off point. I found that as I went from political group to political group, and I saw this fraction taking place, there were individuals just like myself, just like Rebecca, just like Lee, who were standing up and saying, no, you're wrong. Here are these facts. Here's what's going on. Here's what needs to be done. You're stupid. And they weren't allowing themselves to be shut down. They were speaking up and speaking out. And so, that created a natural bond because, Rebecca said something that, was valid. I wanted to bring my expertise to the field in my particular area, my background, and help support her as an ally. Same thing, in regard to Lee. I don't have any military service. Lee has a military background. So whenever you had these people spreading lies and disinformation about how our government works, how our military works, how we operate in foreign countries, Lee, who's a combat veteran, could come in and say, no, this is, really what's going on. And on top of that, you could also find individuals who are posing as members of the military who are basically using stolen valor to get some kind of credibility that could be used to side with others. And so it really became evident to me that our diversity was our strength. And if we could stick together and work together, we can start to push back in a way that our government is not doing online as we're being left open and exposed for hacking disinformation by Facebook, by, the lack of any kind of cybersecurity, on social media.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
This shift in the Overton window, it's not by accident. It's not spontaneously happening. I remember reading a while back a book called The Big Book of Pain about the history of torture since the dawn of time. And in the beginning, it talked about how societies come to where they start inflicting torture, and it basically summed it up just like the fascist theology, the 14 points of fascism. You have to create an enemy of the state, real or imagined, in order to start that division. Once the division started, you can then separate the good people from this enemy and make them less human. And the less human that you can make them, the more willing your populace, your citizenry is going to be willing to look the other way or even actively participate in acts of violence and torture against this group.
That makes good people do bad shit to other good people, basically.
Yes, if you can rationalize in your mind, oh, these people are bad, they're evil, there's no redemption in them, then you can rationalize doing unspeakable things.
Oh, okay. So it's so funny you mentioned that because I just got this comment from a woman I have never met before, never interacted with her before, but something that we had said here on our network and across social media. She said, "Hey, you don't know me, but and in fact, she said I'm sometimes afraid to post on the page because you just don't know, and I don't want these people coming after me." But she's like, "You're my hero." I mean, literally, I just got that message. So, everything that you guys are saying here is absolutely true, and I think that that's what Progressive Insider had been working to do, was push back on the corporate media narrative. Like my own personal, I guess, what would make me mad is to see a bland headline for something so egregious, or making it sound like when we have the police brutality, they were couching it in such a way, like this one that just came out in Virginia, where the Virginia state trooper brutalized this man for an expired tag. And it said that there was an escalated confrontation between these two. And I'm like, that's a lie. That is not what happened. You had an unarmed taxpaying citizen who was assaulted by a psycho cop. That is a far more accurate headline than what they were actually saying. Because the driver in the video, you can see he's very calm the whole time. I mean, he's calm on the outside, but you can tell he's terrified. He did
I've
nothing.
seen several videos like that, and it's crazy that several.
Yeah, a confrontation denotes that it's two ways, right? That the two people are equal and they're both losing their temper. That's not what's happening. So we had tried to do that from a media perspective, covering the news and the headlines and the events as they unfolded. Like Andy and I talked at length this morning about what was going on in Portland. And what I'm seeing, corporate media is just now picking up what has been happening for 3 days. But the way that they're reporting it is coming from a very neutral, vanilla, inaccurate place. What is literally happening is, this is what martial law looks like in the United States. This is absolutely what it is.
Experiencing it right now. This is happening right now.
Exactly. So this is why Annie and I tried to pull as much information as we could, and kudos to the journalists that were working on this. We were able to elevate their good work. And I was just texting with one of them now, see if we can get her on the program on Monday. But this is why it's important to kind of match these two things together. In my mind, the media portion of it is just so vital right now, and then the activism and the way that I think, like Joseph, you have this, or I'm sorry, Brandon. Yeah, you have this way of turning things around into a hilarious kind of terminology that I think just cuts through all the bullshit, and I think it's wonderful just the way you do it. So
it kind of could bring people together.
I mean, I found that's one of the things that worked starting off. Whenever you're dealing with authoritarianism, when you're dealing with fascism, and even outside of me, you see comedians doing it all the time. This is one of the main reasons why censorship happens whenever it comes to authoritarian regimes, because there's a narrative that has to be perpetuated. There's that authoritarian regime is above question. They can't be challenged. They can't be critiqued in any shape, form, or fashion. And so, people can refute facts. They can argue facts all day long. But, you can't make somebody laugh unless it's, like, actually funny. In order for something to be funny, there's got to be some kind of truth behind the joke that makes people think, oh, that's crazy, that's going on, or whatever.
Exactly.
And that dissonance between, the truth they present and, which is a lie, and reality, connects, I believe, in the minds of people and causes them to laugh. And whenever you're laughing at somebody, you're not going to take them seriously. You're less likely to submit. And laughter is infectious. If the joke is truly funny, we're all together.
They find themselves funny eventually, right?
Exactly.
They find themselves funny. Yeah.
And so whenever it brings people together like that, you create this spontaneous moment where everybody is in consensus that whatever we are laughing about is absurd. It's insane.
It's all absurd at the moment.
Exactly. There's so much absurdity. There's so much absurdity now. When it started off, it was like, Trump, we had plausible deniability. We don't know, but he's got a history of being racist. But, he's going to change.
He just likes money.
Exactly. He's just pandering to an audience he's playing a role. He's a carnival barker. This is just what he does.
Yeah.
He's going to make America great again. Just like overlook, the past racism, the current racism. It's a shit. It's a thing.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of people let that stuff roll, and it just picked up momentum. Because as Trump found out, the more racist he became, the greater his following became. The more xenophobic he became, that was red meat. And he could wield that and use that against members of his party. So it's like, well,
the racist business model is what it is.
And so what I figured was, where they thrive off of demonization, vitriol, hate, venom, and everything, there's got to be, I believe in balance in the universe. I believe in good forces and bad forces. Maybe I watched a bunch of Star Wars growing up, whatever. But the fact is, I believe that there are energies that counter other energies. And
exactly.
Effective energy.
Yeah.
You know what?
Hold on one quick second. There's somebody I really have to give a shout out to, and this is Pamela Stitcher. So Pamela, correct me if I'm wrong. You worked at what was billed as a independent progressive media. I want to say Alternet, but I can't recall. So forgive me for that. But Pamela, talk about finding headlines. She will find some amazing stories that have been buried. Most of the time they've been buried. Occasionally these are things that are hot off the presses, and she will forward them to me. So it's been just so supremely helpful with all the other work that we're trying to do here. She has been just a godsend for me, because she's giving me, okay, hey, you need to pay attention to this, or maybe look at this over here, and what do you think about this? So these are sometimes they're fringe stories, sometimes they're not, and when you start pulling it apart, they become really interesting, and then they're the stories that corporate news either isn't going to cover or won't touch for another month. So thank you, Pamela. She's has a long career in journalism, and now she plays with her grandbabies all day long. So thank you for all the help that you do, and welcome to our informal happy hour this afternoon on our birthday of something bigger. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I really wanted to say hey to Pamela.
That's what I feel like, this whole thing is about. It allows people, and that's what I liked about Progressive Insider whenever I came across Progressive Insider, because one thing that was missing, one component that was missing in regard to the DLF was the fact that there weren't a lot of people who had any kind of, journalism backgrounds. They didn't have any kind of production background.
Very true. You don't have all that stuff.
Exactly. So they wanted to help, get the message out to grow our group and everything. But, I, work here at Hilling Green Farms, at hemp farm. I work for Duke University producing video for them. And then I was busy doing DLF, and it was just a lot. And so, I came across, Progressive Insider, and you guys welcomed me in, and then, evolution happened, and now, here we are. But, I digress. The main thing is having people from a variety of backgrounds makes it so we can get a message out. It's not on just like one person to do any one thing. So our diversity is our strength in regard to different backgrounds coming to the table. But somebody who may, have been, may have a journalistic background who's just casually observing can, submit links. Somebody, who goes to a protest can record video at that protest. So, we're instantly, any and everywhere based off of our audience, where if you're dealing with a larger studio, they have to fly somebody out there, find correspondents on the ground and whatnot. They have to get into places where we already are. And so,
I have to say, a lot of people have access to local protests. I have access to local protests that I attend. Okay, so we need to be sharing that stuff with the group when we go, because we're not just one state now. It's other states. There's always things going on, and changes trying to be made, and you have to be able to kind of visually show what's going on sometimes with people. That's why you have to, like you said,
Yeah,
people
and
on
then,
the top that live there.
right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we do is, like, if you're at a protest and you see some information and you hand it off to us, either in a video or whatever, we are so good at tracking things down, tracking down the who, where, what, and to
Watch that.
confirm all of the information that you're seeing in the video. And we can put some actual data and statistics behind it and really get that out there very quickly. So I just want to stress to everybody, this is just a really small cross section of the group that we've had. This was
Right, there's a lot more. There's a
yeah.
whole lot more.
This is just the people who had nothing better to do than to jump onto an unplanned kind of a little live stream so that we could talk a little bit about what these changes are, who we are, and some of the things that are coming up. So Brandon, no, actually Lee, you're still on, right? Lee's still here? Lee says,
Yes, I'm here.
yeah. Okay, so
I do Carl off. I gotta go rescue someone, but
oh.
I'm still here.
Okay, so Andy and I talked about one of the things that we are personally so excited about was the getting union status, and we're in the process right now of doing that. And since we voted you as one of our shop stewards, do you have anything you want to talk about from a union perspective? Why this matters?
Last part one more time.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit. Maybe I'm gonna pass this one on back to Brandon. So this Lee's probably driving in the holler.
Yeah.
And
When we come back on, he normally comes back on video. Sometimes when he's on a job or he's on call more than anybody else I know. Because there's a lot to it. Yeah. But yeah, sometimes he ends up out in the boondocks. But yeah, as far as the union model, and Karen, you and I can both talk about this. That's one other thing I liked about Progressive Insider was the fact that it was going to be, a co-op. Basically, we all own, everybody who participates in running DLF, owns this organization. We make, votes about leadership, about management, about how resources are going to be allocated in a democratic fashion. So we're all invested in the success of this company, and we're all invested in we share a similar background, and we want to have that truth out there because we recognize there was a gap in regard to how things are being covered. You're either looking at the liberal perspective or the conservative perspective through the lens of those who have the most resources in those respective camps. And so that's what causes situations where individuals like, Rebecca falls through the cracks. Where individuals like Breonna Taylor, like you don't find out about like someone like that getting murdered for months at a time, where in that community, people were already outspoken. We're just getting up to speed. Same thing with regard to Sandra Bland. So we have all of these local movements, these local causes that exist that were going under the radar, and they weren't being covered because the people who were covering they didn't share any kind of, it wasn't sensational enough. It wasn't bringing enough sponsors to the table. And having a co-op that's owned, where the news is owned by the people, where we are the news, you can't call us fake. We'll go online and talk straight to your face. Having that and allocating, the resources that the spoils of that equitably to advance our cause, puts us in a different boat.
But let me tell you, Breonna Taylor and even Elijah McClain are two cases that you could continuously point at to say, these are people that were complying. One of them was asleep in her bed. The other one was telling them please and begging them and telling them thank you and all kinds of other shit. And they were still killed.
Yeah. It defies logic.
Never say they weren't complying.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I remember with
used to emphasize de-escalation techniques very heavily. Now it's a definite shift towards comply or die.
Right, because there's people with autism, there's people with other mental disorders that require you to de-escalate them. Other than that, they're not dangerous. If you know how to de-escalate them, you're fine.
Exactly. And I guarantee you, for every national breaking story about police killing, there's a local one that's being ignored by the national media. Not covered up, just.
Right? You were telling me about one in North Carolina.
Marcus,
Yeah, we got one in Greensboro. Marcus Dion Smith.
Yeah.
Was a homeless man. Non-violently approached the police. He was high. He was having a mental health crisis and was begging to be taken to the hospital.
Yeah.
He was very agitated, and you know, it's a very long video, so you know, someone who doesn't have a lot of time often, it's hard to sit through it all in one sitting.
They easily dismiss like that. Yeah.
Long story short, it ended up with 8 cops and 2 EMTs standing around while he was hogtied in the prone, and eventually died that way. And then the police chief lied and said he died at the hospital later.
That's fucked up. That's fucked up. There's no other nice way to say that.
I don't know. Jerry, we got a video in. We got another. The other half of the Dan Whitfield video you're ready to come up in 15, right?
It's 8 o'clock Eastern, but I need to get set up to get that set out. So Dan Whitfield actually joined Andy and I this morning. He was typing in the chat, and if you haven't seen the video that we did this morning, the Hair of the Dog episode, Dan Whitfield was dropping some serious truth this morning. I couldn't believe it. He was putting stuff in the chat like, okay, so they got 90,000 signatures to get ranked choice voting on the ballot in November in Oklahoma. 90,000 signatures. And then what happened was Tom Cotton found out about it, wrote an op-ed, it was published in the paper, and then I think he said the Secretary of State the next day pulled ranked choice voting off the ballot and said, oh, no, you needed to certify some signatures. Just because Tom Cotton did. So Dan Whitfield was in our chat just dropping all of this information here. So if you have not seen part 1 of the interview that Brandon did with Dan Whitfield on his follow-up, you got to see it, and then part 2 is coming out this evening in about an hour.
Yeah, it was a really good interview that I enjoyed doing, and yeah, you should. I was there this morning too, and it's just crazy the authoritarianism that's like being implemented all over the country, in that fashion where basically they are. I mean, just like down in Alabama where they banned the mask. Oh, no, it was in Georgia, right? Governor Kemp of Georgia is
banned the mask?
Yeah, basically refusing to allow local mask requirements. So it's like, this absurdity is happening across the board, basically, disenfranchising people of, their vote, like
wait. You know what he said? He said, you can make it a law all you want, but you can't expect people to comply.
What does that mean then? So
you can't have you can have a counterfeit 20 and still live? Does that mean that?
Or you don't have to do the speed limit or pay your taxes.
Like, come on. They pick and choose. That's what that shows you. They pick and choose.
So yeah, we do have to kind of wrap this up, but I appreciate everybody jumping on and having a little chit chat, talk about what we're doing, and say hello in an informal way to all the people that watch us and are such incredible supporters. So thank you for doing that. Thank you. So yeah, so with our content, progressive candidates don't always get a fair shake in the media. They can hear progressive causes, policies, activism, all of these things. That's why what we're doing is so important. So thank you, everybody, for your kind support. So anybody else have anything they want to wrap up with?
I'm excited.
Yay, free bud for everybody. Yay.
What?
I'm wishing. I'm hopeful, but I know that's not going to happen. Oh well.
I just like to say, whenever you see someone who's anti-mask, don't forget to tell them "Dicks out for freedom."
Thank
I
you, Lee.
can't say that. Me and Terry can't say that. We gotta say pussies out.
Right, exactly. All right, well, with that, let's go ahead and get out of here, and I'm gonna go get myself a real drink. So thank you, everybody, and be sure to tune in here in about an hour, 8 p.m. Eastern, part 2 of the Dan Whitfield interview. It's amazing. The stuff that he's going through. So check that out. So thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Brandon. Andy was here briefly. Yeah, and everybody in our chat. This was great. Thank you so much. All right, we're out of here.